go, and here we are. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Who we got here tonight? It's a double chapter, so that means we'll have double the viewers, right? That's how it works. Am I coming through clearly to everyone? Hey, Claire. Hey, Maddie. Christy, hey. How's everyone tonight? Hey, Paige. Getting in with an early question, Claire. Thrown off by the Swan Ship. Anyone else thrown off by the Swan Ship? The Swan Ship, I won't get into it, but here's a teaser. The Swan Ship is from the Silmarillion, and it's another of Tolkien's little insertions into the Lord of the Rings because the publishers all told him that he was never going to get the Silmarillion published. So he was like, well, fine, I'm going to put everything I like from the Silmarillion, not everything, little tidbits that I like from the Silmarillion into Lord of the Rings. Yo, Cece, hey, welcome to the live stream. Stephanie, hello. Morgan, hi. Oh, yeah. Joint is jumping tonight. Well, we have two. I want to do two passages because there were two clear passages that people wanted to dive into in the Discord discussion, and quite foreseeable ones, which was the Mirror of Galadriel and the gifts that that Celeborn and Galadriel gave the Fellowship as they were leaving, and I want to talk about both of them. Let's do a quick. I want quickly to talk about a question of Jesse's. A lot of them I think that Jesse put in there are going to come out in the chat, but there was one I don't think we can pass by, her fifth question, which was about Sam dropping the elves sir, the sir off of elves, which I thought was pretty funny and a good catch, absolutely. So Jesse's question was, I feel like Sam is dropping the sir in elves sir here because he is losing his fascination with them a little. As in, they don't seem like some amazing, almost fairy tale-like creatures anymore, and he sees that they are just people too. I like the double quotation marks, just for emphasis, people, because they're not really people, they're elves. Let's read the passage, because Sam does drop the elves, sir, and that is notable. And that is page 469 in my version. So we're talking about in the Mirror of Galadriel. And Frodo is asking him again what he thinks of elves now, Sam. And it seems a very long while ago since he asked the question previously, but you have seen more of them since then. I have indeed, said Sam, and I reckon there's elves and elves. And perfect opportunity there for sir, ordinarily. They're all elvish enough, but they're not all the same. Now these folk aren't wanderers or homeless, and seem a bit nearer to the likes of us. They seem to belong here, even more than hobbits do in the Shire. He goes on like that about how he feels about them. He doesn't say elves again in that passage. I'm not sure that. Yeah, I'm not even sure in that conversation he does again. But it is conspicuous when he says, "And I reckon there's elves and elves." It's like if it were a poem, and there's a missing word, something in the rhythm. A syllable is just not there, and it should be, right? It's conspicuous in its absence. So, why does he drop the sir? Jesse's contention is that elves are becoming more commonplace to him, and I think that's borne out in some of what he says. A bit nearer to the likes of us, perhaps. I have another, and that's possible, and I think that's part of it. I have another theory. the Sir might not be dropped in relation to the elves. It might be dropped in relation to Frodo. And I'm saying this off the cuff without real evidence, so I want to kind of keep an eye on that. Does he continue calling Frodo Sir quite as often? I'm wondering if it's not elves that he's getting comfortable with, but Frodo. And that isn't to say that he forgets his place, so to speak. He Frodo is his employer, his master in that sort of relationship. And I think that I wouldn't want to go too far with this point, but I do wonder if all this traveling and all this adventuring has made him a bit more familiar. And my evidence for that is not necessarily anything with Frodo, but with Pippin. And from the previous chapter, well, 2 chapters before that, from Lothlorien, when they're up on the flat with the elves, and he says, Pippin says, Pippin went on talking for a while. I hope if I do go to sleep in this bird loft that I shan't roll off, he said. Once I do get to sleep, said Sam, I shall go on sleeping whether I roll off or no. And the less said, the sooner I'll drop off, if you take my meaning. So Sam tells Pippin to shut up. And I don't think chapter 3 Sam would have told Pippin to shut up. This is most familiar. This is banter and hobbitry. I could see Merry saying this to Pippin, and I wouldn't bat an eye at it. But Sam saying this to Pippin? I mean, this is Sam Gamgee, who ain't putting on airs, saying this to he's not the Took yet, but he will be. He's the heir to being the Took in the Shire. Yeah, Christy was there before me. The Sir really pertains to who Sam's talking to. Less of just a gardener now. Just is a tough word. He's always going to see himself as just a gardener, and not in a pejorative sense. That's who he is. That's his identity. He's a gardener, and he's proud of that. That's part of who he is. I don't think that diminishes him. Yeah. So Claire, you were there before me too, and this is where I would worry about going too far. Claire says, it seems like a self-confidence thing to me. He feels like he's moved outside of his world and gone off on an adventure and sees them as his equal. I agree with you up until the end. I still don't believe that Samwise Gamgee sees Frodo or the elves or even Merry or Pippin as his equal. That's not the world he grew up in or how he was raised, and that's a touchy thing for us to say in the Western world in 2021. But that's the case, and I think we need to acknowledge that. That's how he feels. That's how he was raised. I don't believe that he would think himself an equal at this time, and I think he would be perfectly comfortable with that. Yes, Morgan, that's right. He still calls him Mr. Frodo, and Mr. is a title with meaning, right? He's a landowner. He's someone of importance. I mean, just giving him a title at all, Sam will still demonstrate respect in the classic servant master way, but he is dropping the Sir, and he is becoming more familiar. I think we can definitely say that with confidence. Sam's familiarity with the party is growing, and he is dropping some of the formality. So my guess is it's less about the elves, Sir, and more about the Sir. Good point, CC, as well, before we move off that. Sam addressing Pippin in that manner may be because of Pippin's age. Pippin is still basically a kid. Yes, Pippin is a minor in the Shire reckoning. He has not yet come of age. That's a good point, and he probably wouldn't speak that way to Merry, and certainly not to Frodo. Yeah, he might be just correcting a kid. Now, I mean, the age difference, it's technical, right? It, you know, it's more slight age difference. He's not a 12-year-old. But you're right. There may still be that. He's not Mr. Unlike what uh, Farmer Maggot calls him, he's not Mr. Peregrine Took yet. He is still Master Took. So that's worth noting. Good point. And yes, Christy, who doesn't get a bit sassy when we're tired? Yes, I've said worse when less sleepy. Okay, Mirror of Galadriel. Let's talk. I want to pick it up around 470 in mine, where after Sam and Frodo have been led down to the basin. Now, first thing I want to see, so Frodo asks, what shall we look for and what shall we see? Galadriel answers, many things and I'm going to emphasize some words here because they're particularly important to me. Many things I can command the mirror to reveal, she answered, and to some I can show what they desire to see. But the mirror will also show things unbidden, and those are often stranger and more profitable than things which we wish to behold. What you will see, if you leave the mirror free to work, I cannot tell. The pronouns are interesting to me. Frodo asks, what will we see? Not, what will you show me? And she responds, many things I can command the mirror to reveal, and to some, I can show what they desire to see. So Galadriel has power over the mirror. She can use it to show things to people or command it to reveal things. The agency there is hers. Next sentence, the mirror will also show things unbidden. The mirror has agency there in a way, in the grammatical construction there, right? The mirror, subject of the sentence, will also show, it's the verb, things unbidden, the object. That is what the mirror will do. So the mirror has some agency, possibly, depending on how you read that. What you will see, if you leave the mirror free to work, I cannot tell. Frodo or Sam have agency. You have the option, there's an if, you have the option of leaving the mirror free to work. So who decides what the mirror will see? I think we can go so far as to say, the mirror may not have agency. That's also a possible reading. The mirror will do things if I command it, or if you leave it free or command it. Can they do that? I assume not. But who has the decision as to what the mirror will show is my question, and it's not entirely clear to me. I would assume it's her, or she could command the mirror to reveal things, or she can just leave it to her guests. The guests can either command it to reveal something, I guess, in the way that Sam does. He wants to see back home. Whereas Frodo leaves the mirror free to work. So does Sam, in a way, command the mirror? I think that's a reading we can work with. Moving quickly along. And you, she said, turning to Sam, for this is what your folk would call magic, I believe, though I do not understand clearly what they mean, and they seem to use the same word of the deceits of the enemy. But this, if you will, is the magic of Galadriel. Did you not say that you wished to see elf magic? I want to delve a little bit into magic here, and magic in Tolkien. Well, that might be getting a little broad for the purposes of this discussion, but magic, at least within this text. Sorry, I'm just going to catch up here. Castlesville, welcome. Students are on activity. Okay, good. Playing hooky for a minute. That's good. Aiden joined too. Awesome. Yeah. Divination. Is there a lot of divination magic in the Lord of the Rings? Palantir. Yeah, Paige says it's called the Mirror of Galadriel. Thus, she would have the last say on if she controls division. I would imagine, yes, last say. I would agree with that. I don't think that anyone, certainly not anyone here, would be able to wrest control of the mirror from her against her will. I'd be very confident in that. Yeah, maybe as castles, maybe not control as to what to show, but to keep it under control like a Palantir. That's a good point. Maybe Galadriel is maybe not commanding what it shows, but keeping it in check or directing it a little bit or keeping it within a certain bound. Although that would mean that she permits the eye of Sauron. Not saying that's impossible or even unlikely. Maddie asks, can she command it to show anything, or is she limited to what is still possible? Let's put a pin in that. I don't have an answer for that. Anything, or what is still possible? I think she can show things that may not come to pass, but are still possible, I guess. Could she, per her heart's wish, show something, show a vision of a world where the ring had never been created? My gut reaction is yes, but I don't have evidence, so let's put a pin in that. Magic. Okay, I want to contrast this because I want to go ahead to Farewell to Lorien to the elf cloaks to get more data on magic here. Are these magic cloaks? Asked Pippin, looking at them with wonder. This is after they've been given the cloaks. I do not know what you mean by that, answered the leader of the elves. They are fair garments, and the web is good, for it was made in this land. They are elvish robes, certainly, if that is what you mean, which I don't think it is. Leaf and branch, water and stone, they have the hue and beauty of all these things under the twilight of Lorien that we love, for we put the thought of all that we love into all that we make. We've talked about Tolkien not liking the word magic before, and I think he's showing that in these passages, right? He thinks it's an imprecise word. He preferred enchantment, and I think that enchantment fits very well what Galadriel does with the mirror and what the elves do with the robes. They are enchanted robes. It is an enchanted mirror. But that is different than I have this cloak. The elves cast a +1 bonus against, or to sneaking and to protection while I'm wearing it. It doesn't aid their armor class. It's not a magic item in the role-playing game sense. So, how do we understand the distinction between magic and enchantment? I think that the key, again, is the elves the leader of the elves saying, we put the thought of all that we love into all that we make. I think that fits not only the craft of the elves, but also their art, right? The way in which Gildor's song, that Frodo and his compatriots here, Frodo and Sam and Pippin here, in the Shire, weaves itself into their minds and they can understand it. So, and the Hall of Fire in Rivendell is another sort of enchantment. They are putting the thought of that which they love into all that they make, including their song, including their cloaks, including the basin that contains the mirror. That's how I read that distinction. I had the same question, and I don't know how to answer it. Why not touch the water? The mundane reason is that it would have waves in it then and ripples, and it wouldn't be smooth and mirror-like. So it would just ruin it. But that seems lame as an answer. I would love to hear a better one. Yeah, Christy gave that same answer, which is the only one that I have. Castlesville says, I was thinking like the ring having some sort of influence and taking over some people, while others can resist it. Could it be that the mirror worked in a similar way? Before considering the similarities, I would say that I would want to consider what Galadriel's response to that would be. And I would imagine her response would be, no, not at all. Because she makes the distinction between her enchantment, she hasn't used the word enchantment, but that's what I'm calling it, and the deceits of the enemy. The magic of the ring is a deceit of the enemy. The enchantment of the mirror is something else. Now, we don't have to take her word for it. We could say, oh no, Galadriel, what you have there and what the ring is doing are actually quite similar. And we can think that through, but she would be horrified by that. I feel confident in saying. Paige says, it seemed like a what's next mirror. If such and such is done, then this would be the result. I don't think she could show a world without the ring. Is it necessarily a what's next mirror? I'm going to skip ahead to something. Her response to Sam after he says he wants to go home. Some never come to... Well, okay, we'll back up a little bit. Remember that the mirror shows many things, and not all have yet come to pass. Some never come to be, unless those that behold the visions turn aside from their path to prevent them. The mirror is dangerous as a guide of deeds. Some never come to be, so X will not happen unless those that behold the visions turn aside from their path to prevent them. So if, let's use Sam in the example, if Sam beholds the vision of the Shire, the devilry at work in the Shire, and turns aside from his path to prevent that devilry in the Shire, this is twisting, because I read this as some never come to be unless they will come to be if Sam turns aside from his quest. What you see in the Shire, the devilry in the Shire, will come to be if you turn aside from your path to prevent it. Now, spoilers, but we know that that's going to happen in the Shire anyway. And he doesn't turn aside from his path. So this, to me, is Galadriel just not foretelling, but speaking truly. Some may not happen. She's wrong about, not wrong, that's incorrect. She is not correctly describing what would happen in this case, necessarily. But her end point, the mirror is dangerous as a guide of deeds. So what's next? If we are to believe her or believe her to be correct in this case, she would be saying that what's happening in the Shire may come to pass if Sam turns aside from his quest. So in the what's next sense, what's next is devilry in the Shire if you turn aside. But there's going to be devilry in the Shire anyway, whether he turns aside or not. Well, when he doesn't turn aside. So it may not be that simple. Isn't it related to the ring? Mr. President, I don't think you've commented before. Isn't it related to the ring? The mirror, presumably. Which ring? The ring or her ring? I would believe the latter. Yeah, Cece says touching the mirror with outside influences would contaminate it and take away its purity. Yes, that's true. In the same way that the muddy orc feet sullied the Nimrodel. Right. Oh, Mr. President. Galadriel's Ring of Water. Yes. Well, her ring is the Ring of Adamant, right? But I think it has power over water as well. Yes. Yeah, I don't think they are unrelated. Absolutely. Yeah, Maddie says that, and I think it's right. She's describing the classic time travel paradox scenario where you go to the past to prevent something and your actions cause the event to happen. Right. Yeah, it's the what was the thing in Sherlock? Merchant of, I want to say Marrakesh. Nah, someone will remind me. Where are my Sherlock watchers at here? But the, yeah. It's also Oracle at Delphi, like, of course. Yeah. Okay. Where am I going with this? I wanted to ask, and this is just sort of a question for first-time readers. I want to ask you how you feel, what you thought about the foreshadowing. The page 471, what Sam saw, Frodo with a pale face lying fast asleep under a great dark cliff, himself going along a dim passage and climbing an endless winding stair. He's looking urgently for something. Never mind the Shire bit for a minute, but then also Frodo's, right? What he looks at, the Gandalf thing, all the ships, the darkness fell, the sun, the white tree, the smoke, fire, and battle, all this stuff. A first-time reader would have, I mean, if you've read it a bunch of times, you've seen the movies, you can kind of pick out, oh, that's that, and oh, that's that. What's a first-time reader think of this? And I have to put myself entirely in your hands here, because I can't imagine what this would be like to read for the first time. I don't remember what it was like to read it for the first time. So what is the effect of that? Just an open question. I'm curious. Okay, I want to keep moving. Yeah, let's talk about Nenya, the Ring of Adamant. Why can Frodo see it? Galadriel gives an answer to that. It cannot be hidden from the ring bearer and one who has seen the eye. The ring bearer and one who has seen the eye. Spoilers. Frodo's already seen two. There are three elven rings. Frodo has seen the bearer of two of them. Of all three of them. This is the third. He did not see their rings. And he was the ring bearer when he saw their rings. Or when he saw them with the rings on, presumably. and he did not perceive the rings. This is the first elven ring that he has perceived, and all that has changed is that he has seen the eye. He was the ring bearer then, so in Galadriel's explanation, it cannot be hidden from the ring bearer and one who has seen the eye. What has changed in Frodo having seen the eye? So when he got stabbed at Weathertop, he was more able to see in the dark, to see shadows, to live kind of in both worlds. We've talked about that, the way that Glorfindel does. So he's partially in the spirit world. But after that happened, he still didn't see the other two. Now he's seen the eye, and that seems to be the tipping point, according to Galadriel. What effects did that have on him? And are there any other lasting effects? We'll have to watch out for that as we go along. I feel like I should be providing an answer to that, and I don't have one. But I wanted to call out that it seemed relevant to me that the only thing that has changed that has allowed him to perceive Nenya is that he has seen the eye. Okay, moving along later down that page. Frodo bent his head. "And what do you wish?" he said at last. "That what should be shall be," she answered. I really bungled my explanation, I felt like I did, of Estel and Umdir, the Elvish words for hope, last time. Looks to me like my video is cutting out. Anyone still there? Getting some still hears here, so okay, all right. I'll keep talking. Let me know if let me know if it cuts out again. I've had problems with the internet all day here. Okay, Umdir and Estel. So I talked about, so in the opening paragraph of Lothlorien, Aragorn says, cries to Gandalf, "Farewell, Gandalf, what hope have we without you?" And then says, "We must do without hope." And I said that was an example of Umdir, that brand of hope. And I think that what Galadriel says here is a good encapsulation of Estel. That what should be shall be. It's a resignation to the divine will. It's an acceptance of providential fate in a way. But it is a hope and faith that providence is good. That is Estel. And I think that it's a better encapsulation of it than I gave, though it could hardly fail to be a worse one. What else? One other... There's nothing else that I had from the Mirror of Galadriel. Anything else from the Mirror of Galadriel that you wanted to talk about before we move on to Farewell to Lorien? because I want to talk about the gifts as well there. My software says that the stream is healthy again. It was saying error for a while. Okay, we'll press on. I said in the Discord, Lorien gifts are greater than Bilbo's party gifts. I think this is borne out. Lembas, cloaks, rope, and the individual gifts. Was there anything else? Did they get anything else from the elves gift-wise? Some nice songs to remember. I want to go through the gifts to the party each. Rissa asks, what was the intent to have only Frodo and Sam look in the pool? Or in the mirror? That's a good question. Yola, yes, hair. Yes, I want to come back to that. Boats, yes, true. Okay. Putting a bow on the Mirror of Galadriel. Why only Frodo and Sam? Do we know, first of all, that it was only Frodo and Sam? It was only Frodo and Sam right then, but did she bring Aragorn down there at some point during their stay? Might have. I'd believe it. Would she have brought Boromir down? I wonder. He'd have seemed to have a change in attitude, right? You wonder what he might have seen. Would she have brought me? I'm going to choose to believe that she might have brought some of them. But why does she only bring them here now at the end? I think because she feels like, as she said, Frodo has courage and wisdom enough. That was what she said, right? Wisdom and courage? Courage and something, anyway. To look. Do Merry and Pippin have wisdom and courage enough to look in the mirror? Kind of doubt it. No offense to them. Yeah. Paige says maybe that's how Legolas and Gimli became fast friends. They shared a vision in the mirror. I'd believe it. I think that they become fast friends there because of Gimli's reference for Galadriel. I think it changes how he looks at the elves. And I think that Legolas responds to that. That's how I've always read it. Yeah, exactly. Yola said maybe others look too, but they didn't tell Frodo, so he didn't write about it. Exactly. Yes, Rissa, I agree. I really like the dialogue between Gimli and Lady Galadriel. It was touching. It really was. It's beautiful. Yeah. Okay. Individual gifts. Aragorn. So first of all, Aragorn gets a sheath for his new sword. Well, his newly reforged sword anyway. It's an old sword. The blade that is drawn from this sheath shall not be stained or broken even in defeat. Now, obviously that's significant because the blade was broken, and she would know that well. So this, whatever happens, you may lose, you may die, your blood may stain this, and you may fall, but this sword will not break again. That's got to be a comfort to him, right? It's I think it's less practical and more symbolic, right? Obviously, you don't want your sword to break in a battle. That's you know, okay. So that's a practical gift, yes, but and also this is an enchantment. This isn't magic. This is elf magic, if you call it, but this is an enchantment. But I think it's symbolic that under your watch, this blade shall not be broken again. You are not condemned or fated to follow the path of Isildur in every way. I guess it was Lendil whose sword broke. It was never really Isildur's sword. Anyway, semantics. Aragorn also talks about, I mean, they speak elliptically a little bit about the other thing that he would want. As a first-time reader, do we have enough information to understand their conversation here? We got a lot of hints about it in many meetings. And they really do kind of just talk around Arwen, don't they? I mean, Aragorn names her, ultimately, a lady of Lorien, of whom were sprung Celebrian and Arwen Evenstar. But as Aragorn says, the gift, the only treasure that he seeks is not hers, Lady Galadriel's, to give me, even if you would. And only through darkness shall I come to it. And then she gives him the elf stone. And we come to learn that a name, LSR, was foretold for him. And I guess that brings us back to, again, many meetings. After Bilbo goes off his verse about Eärendil. As a matter of fact, it was all mine, Bilbo says, all the verse, except that Aragorn insisted on my putting in a green stone. He seemed to think it important. That's tough to parse at the time, but now we see another green stone. And we see why it's important to him that an elf stone, be in the mix. But why is it important that it be attributed to Eärendil? Because so Arwen is descended from Eärendil on her father's side, but she's not descended from Eärendil on her mother's side, and her mother is where she got, her mother's side is where she got this green stone. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. I'm not sure I can unravel that. But anyway, it's clear that's where the green stone comes from. We get a couple quick hitters. A belt of gold to Boromir, and small silver belts with a clasp wrought like a golden flower to Merry and Pippin. And then we move on. You guys get belts. I don't know what to make of that, I'll be honest. Boromir gets gold, the hobbits get silver. We know gold and silver to be sort of the first and second place. I don't really see any significance to that. I don't know what to say to that. They seem to get short shrift, but uninteresting. To Legolas she gave a bow, such as the Galathrim used, longer and stouter than the bows of Mirkwood, and strung with a string of elf hair. With it went a quiver of arrows. I've read this so many times before and never realized that the two friends both got elf hair. The two new friends, Legolas and Gimli. Because to Riss's point, I kind of rushed to the dialogue between Gimli and Lady Galadriel. It's beautiful. And Legolas got a bow. Okay, that's nice. But he also got elf hair. And that's significant because it is the tie that binds them together. Sam's little box of earth. Plain gray wood. Earth from Galadriel's orchard. That puts me in mind of The Ring Goes South, where Sam is taking inventory of the pack on his shoulders. He carried a little box of salt that he always carried and refilled when he could. I don't know what to make of the fact that he's now got a little box of salt and a little box of earth. Is that box of salt referenced again later? I feel like it is. Does anyone remember where the box of salt is brought up? Maybe that'll give us a clue. Also, no one has come up with the Sherlock reference that I was trying for about the merchant who meets death in the marketplace and then runs away. What? That is going to bother me. I'm working at like 20% capacity because like most of my brain is trying to remember. It's not Agrabah. That's from Aladdin. Bah. Okay. Gimli's hair, strands of hair. I think what yes, Paige, very good. One last thing for Aragorn's gift. Galadriel had to mention she gives it to him as a symbol of hope. Thank you, Christy. Samara. The appointment in Samara. It was figuratively killing me. Now it comes to you, the Elfstone, as a token of hope. His given name as a child in Rivendell was Estelle, which means hope. And now it comes to you as a token of hope. Yep, great catch. Love that. Stacey says, salt is a symbol of healing and preservation, and the earth a symbol of rebirth, both of which play major roles in coming events. Healing and preservation, yes. It's a symbol of healing. I'm ill-disposed to this because when I think of salt and earth, I think of Carthage and the Romans salting the earth of Carthage so that nothing would ever grow there again after they destroyed it. So they don't go together great in my mind. But I guess he doesn't combine the boxes, and I needn't think too close about that. That's clearly not the direction that Tolkien was going with it. Okay, Gimli. Okay. All of this is great, but what I want to focus on is the elves stirring and murmuring with astonishment, and Celeborn gazing at the dwarf in wonder. This has backstory, and without going too deeply into the Silmarillion, this is not the first time Galadriel has been asked for her hair, but it's the first time that she assents to it. Galadriel's hair is important. It is beautiful. It is as though the light of the two trees of Valinor is mingled in it. It is a legendary hair. And one of the, probably the chief figure of the Silmarillion, Feanor, asked her for her hair, for a lock of it or a strand of it or something, and she refused him. And so the elves, with their long memory, that's the first thing they would think of here. Someone just asked Galadriel for a strand of her hair. She refused even Feanor that, and this dwarf dares ask it. There's more to this than, oh, that's a rather odd request, or that's a rather improper gift, or unusual even. This has precedent, and it's not good. But Galadriel smiles. Now, again, this is a different Galadriel from the Silmarillion. Not a different one in terms of a different person, but a different personality. Older and wiser, I think. But she smiles and says, none have ever made to me a request so bold and yet so courteous. A request that bold has been made to her, but not courteously. And how shall I refuse, since I commanded him to speak? I find that sometimes bringing in Silmarillion stuff can muddy the waters a little bit, but I'm sharing that tidbit because to me that enhances the passage so much. That understanding that in Tolkien's mind, this is not an unprecedented request, and it has so much gravity because of that. Becky, yes, that's true. Yes, salt of the earth. Yes, the expression that he's the salt of the earth is a compliment. A good person, solid, grounded. Yes, I mean that's biblical, right? That the salt. Yes, that's a good way of thinking of salt and earth. Better than Carthage. Yes, you're called to be salt of the earth. Yes, and light of the world. Mr. President is asking, didn't the Silmarils get made based on the hair? The Silmarils were made... No, the Silmarils were made based on the light of the two trees, which was mingled in it. But when, spoiler, the trees were destroyed, I think... Didn't he want her hair... now I'm getting confused. It's been the better part of a year since I read it. The Silmarils captured the light of the trees. I don't think they were based on her hair, but there's some connection with her hair that I'm missing a little bit. Yeah. Yes, Cece, great question. Cece, you're on fire tonight. What do you make of the fact that Gimli was the only one who got to request his gift? Well, not quite the only one, right? She did ask Aragorn. But is there aught else that you desire of me at our parting? For darkness will flow between us, and it may be that we shall not meet again unless it be far hence upon a road that has no returning. So she did ask Aragorn, do you want anything else? But she had already given him a gift and already had another one to give him. And I feel like it's kind of a leading question, right? Because as he says, she knows what, you know all my desire. She knows what matters to him. So I think that's kind of a lead into the stone. But for Gimli, she didn't prepare anything at all, and I think that's also significant. Yeah. Yeah, Maddie, right, exactly. Why no gold belt for Gimli? Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do I make of it? I think, on the fly here, but she has clearly has some ability to see into the hearts and minds of people. I mean, Gimli is obviously taken with her. Infatuated seems like minimizing it, but he's it is a courtly love that he has for her. He will be her champion, and not in an improper way, I don't think, given that Celeborn is right there. Not that he matters much, but she can tell how he feels. She doesn't even need her special gifts to see into his heart. I think she's inviting him to ask this. That would be my take. Um, yeah. Yeah, Christy. They didn't have a belt good enough for, you don't want to give dwarves inferior workmanship. Yes, that's true. If these were Noldor elves, um, Gildor and Lorien could make a belt better than Gimli could, but no Sindar elves. Um, yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Gimli was ultimately good about being blindfolded. Yeah, yeah. I think this is her giving him an opening to ask for what he does. And then finally, Frodo. Frodo and the file. I'm just realizing now. She talks about it being the light of Earendil's star. And we got verses about Earendil in the House of Elrond. Do we have enough information as first time non Silmarillion readers when this is published to understand that Earendil is a star now, kind of? I mean, talk about the light of a Silmaril. That's what this is. That's what is caught in the file. The light of a Silmaril. Um, I don't know that there's a lot to be said about the being a light for you in dark places when all other lights go out until we get to that point. But I do think that her parting words there, with the gift anyway, are remember Galadriel and her mirror. Remember Galadriel, that's all well and good. And her mirror. Why remember her mirror? That wasn't like a good experience for Frodo, really. Right? Like, why? Why remember Galadriel's mirror? Why is that her parting instruction here? Especially vis-a-vis the file. I guess just because he's carrying the water of the fountain. I'm asking a lot of questions tonight that I don't have very good answers to, but I think it's better to ask them than not because you guys have good answers often. Um, did you have anything else about the gifts. Anyway, yeah, Rissa is saying no as a first-time reader. We don't have enough. I agree. We don't have enough information. So Earendil's star. I feel like we're getting a little bit like, pulled around here because. Okay, if you read the Earendil poem very carefully, the last stanza, and over Middle-earth he passed, and heard at last the weeping sore of women and of elven maids in elder days in years of yore. But on him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade, an orbed star to pass, and tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are, forever still an errand on a herald on an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar, the flame afar of westerness. Okay, so if you don't skip the poetry, and you read it carefully, you understand that he is now an orbed star, or a star in orbit, basically, bearing his shining lamp afar. So it's not in prose anywhere, but we do get enough information there to know that he is a star, or he is like unto a star now. Yeah, see, there is a good reason for Sam to remember. Yes. Sam should remember Galadriel in her mirror. Why should Frodo? Just going back to Gandalf. Maybe. I mean, as he remembers the vision, much more will be revealed to him about that vision of Gandalf, right? Nothing about the sea, darkness falling, the sea rising and raging in a great storm, the sun, a black outline of a tall ship with sails riding up out of the west. That's all in the past. Nothing about the wide river flowing through a populous city and a white fortress with 7 towers. He's not part of any of this. This is all going to happen or has happened, and he is nowhere near it. And then there's the eye. So remember Galadriel in her mirror. The only thing to me that he should remember about that is the figure that reminded him of Gandalf. Was this a vision of Gandalf on one of his many lonely journeys long ago, or was it Saruman? Although, not even until the end will he get any clarity on that. Now that I think about it. A threat. If you, Castlesville said it, if it's a threat, if you fail, you've seen what will happen. Presumably what you mean is the eye. Remember the mirror of Galadriel because you should be more scared. I don't know. Does that hang together? Christy looked up the difference between phial and vial. The first is specifically for medicine, while a vial can hold perfume or other chemicals. It's interesting. Phial is an archaic kind of word. Yeah. Page says, for Frodo to remember how much pull the eye had on the ring, even in a mirror. I'm trying to come up with a reason why he should remember Galadriel in her mirror in a positive way. And maybe it's not there. Maybe, as you guys are suggesting, it's like a remember how scared you should be kind of thing. That just doesn't feel right to me. Okay, Maddie says to to remember Sam's vision. Frodo to remember Sam's vision, where Sam was carrying on with something while Frodo was lying pale under a cliff. So trust in Sam. Yeah, I don't like send him away for crumbs or something like that stupid part of the movie. Yes, Christy, they did Chekhov's gun the light and dark places. That's for sure. Yep. Yeah, we know how it's going to be used already. As a first-time reader, we would know that. Remember Galadriel's mirror, because you're going to be lying pale under a cliff and Sam's going to be doing stuff. Okay, remember it to what end? Okay, Sarah Cowan says remember, or maybe it's just to remember that even when he's far away, she can still see him. That's interesting. Do we get any evidence that she is watching him later? Racking my brain for that one. I mean, I know there's that part in the movie where she, like, makes him stand up, but I don't think that's from the book. Okay. Mr. President, maybe remember Galadriel's mirror because you gained power somehow by seeing the eye. Okay. That's another good option. How does that aid him later? What does he see that he wouldn't otherwise be able to see later? I would want to say something like covetous intent of one of your party members, maybe, but he doesn't really see that. Sam sees it, but he doesn't. Page says, remember, those are only visions that things that may be. Those are only visions of things that may be only. Yes. Remember that Galadriel's mirror may or may not mean anything at all. Yeah, so maybe it's, I mean, to Sarah's point, maybe it's not, remember what you saw in Galadriel's mirror, and more, remember that Galadriel has a mirror. I can see things, but can she affect anything? Can she order anything? Or, okay, let me workshop this. You have this file, which is of water from my fountain. It is a token of my fountain. Remember when you have this file, remember the power of my fountain and my mirror. And recall that there is power for good in the world. And, hang on, and in the Morgul Vale, above, well, on the way to Cirith Ungol, when the Witch King is riding out with his army, and he perceives the other power in his valley, and Frodo is tempted to put on the ring, he grabs the file, right? And the feeling passes. Remember Galadriel and her mirror. What is he doing when he grabs the file? Is he remembering Galadriel and her mirror, focusing on a power other than the one that is compelling him? Lola says, yeah, to be honest, I always felt about it rather, even in the shadow of the biggest threat, there's hope. As it can be bad, she saw it, but nothing's decided. She warned him that it shall happen if he fails, but it's not decided yet what will happen. Yeah, okay, so remember Galadriel's mirror. And remember that you have agency in what happens. I like that too. Nothing's decided. Remember Galadriel in her mirror. Things may come to pass. You have agency in the things that come to pass. Mr. President says Nenya's power is concealment, so he's being hidden from the Witch King's gaze by the power of Nenya. Yeah, I see that connection. I mean, we don't, I mean, do we know explicitly that Nenya has some concealment power that Vilya and what's the other one? I don't remember. The other two Elven Rings don't have concealment? I think, absent evidence to the contrary, I would think that they all do. But maybe they give power according to your ability, and Galadriel is easily the most powerful of the three wearers of the Elven Rings. Yeah. Okay, I think we've got the remember Galadriel and her mirror thing surrounded. And I think we're well over our usual time, so I should probably call it there. For Sunday, I do want to, we have two shorter chapters as well to close out Fellowship of the Ring, and that will bring us to the end of that book. So I want to do those for Sunday, and I want to talk about them next Thursday. To that point, I have made the call. Unfortunately, I don't love doing this, but I am going to have to take a pause on in between the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers. I would love to just jump right into the Two Towers, but I don't know. A pause of indeterminate length. The reason being, where we live, they have shut everything down. We are in like ultra double super secret lockdown here, stay at home order and everything else. So that has thrown, a lot of chaos into our life in terms of like having family or helping with the kids, getting our work done and whatever. So they're getting into all that. Everyone's busy, but we are particularly busy right now. And I just know that I will not have the time after next week to really put the time that I should into diving into the Two Towers. So my plan is to pick it up again as soon as possible, but I do want to put that out there that next week's will be the last live and the last chapter in Discord that we're going to talk about for a while. But I'm glad that we're going to get through the Fellowship of the Ring before that pause. So sorry about that, everyone. I did intend to keep going, but this has been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to next week in any case. So let's keep it going. We'll talk Sunday on Discord. We'll start the last two chapters, The Great River and The Breaking of the Fellowship, and then I'll see you all again here on Thursday. Hope everyone is well wherever you are in the world, and talk to you soon. Thanks for a fun night.